Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel, the best place to be to discover exactly how your thoughts and your emotions are affecting your whole health. Hi, I'm Andrea Coulter, and this week I'm going to talk about fear. So following along the videos that I've been doing is a series of videos talking about the secret language of emotions and how those emotions are affecting your physical health. Because often we don't really relate, these weird and unusual symptoms we have with something emotional and then connecting that emotion to a thought. We very rarely stop to actually do that. We just want to get rid of the physical symptom. But in order to really get rid of those physical symptoms, we have to be aware of where those physical symptoms are coming from. Now, okay, if you fall off your bike and you scratch and hurt yourself and tear a ligament or whatever, that's a known cause. You're well aware that it is a physical trauma that you've created and you need to deal with that physical trauma in the right way with the right remedies. But at the same time, being aware that, well, why did you fall off your bike? What was the emotional state you were in that caused you or triggered you to be in a place where you needed to go through that experience? So this week I'm talking about fear, and this is actually going to be the last one in this series. Unless there's an emotional state that I haven't talked about that you'd like me to talk about, message me and let me know. But I'm going to end with fear. We've been talking a lot about a lot of anger issues in the past videos. If you haven't watched those, please go back and watch those. If you have or aren't sure of, maybe I have some unresolved anger issues or that have led into other states. Because it's funny how we really recognize our fear much easier than we recognize our anger. And how anger then, when we don't recognize it, gets repressed into other deeper states like shame and resentment and guilt and so on. So go back and watch those. But fear, we're aware that when something shocking happens and we're afraid, it's like, oh my God, fight or flight, gotta run, gotta do, gotta be. Emergency situations and traumas and shocks are a natural way to experience our fear, and there's a reason for that. You need to get out of danger's way or harm, and in order to protect yourself. There's a healthy place for fear in our lives, but there's also an unhealthy place for fear, and this is where most problems begin. So if you have a shock or trauma or an emergency situation and you never let yourself work through it properly and you never resolve it properly, it then starts to impinge upon the rest of your life and your life force, causing all kinds of physical problems. So as I said, healthy fear, triggers our adrenal system. It's our fight or flight. It's our get up and go. And there's a healthy place for it, and there's a need for it. However, in chronic situations where that fight or flight or the sympathetic parasympathetic system gets switched and we become chronically in fear or uncertainty or worry or anxiety or stress, all of this is connected to some unknown fears. And when that system gets triggered and becomes chronically turned on and we are in chronic fight or flight, what happens is the adrenal system is constantly on go. It is constantly sending signals out to try to fix this issue. And what happens in that situation is your sympathetic system, which is your rest system, your digestion, your assimilation, that kind of healing system, that's your sympathetic system. And that's the system that we need in order to digest our food properly and to let our body heal and repair cellular damage, and our immune system is boosted up and all of these things. Yet when we get shifted over into parasympathetic, what happens is we shut down that whole system. So what happens is in fight or flight, your body goes, oh my God, I'm in danger. Even if it's not a conscious danger, you're not running away from a tiger, but you're running away from your fears. And what happens then is your digestive system and the healing system shuts down so that it can pump blood from the internal body out to the external body so you can run or fight or do whatever you need to do. So it shuts everything else down. Now, when it becomes chronic, think of that. So if you are chronically feeling like this, then your whole digestive system that you need shuts down to a large degree. Then you're not properly repairing and healing. You're not able to fully live life, and so things just start to shut down and solidify. It's not a healthy place to be. So how do we fix that? Because have you ever noticed how when you are feeling anxious or stressed or worrying about things, that your digestion stops? That you're just not as hungry? I don't know about you, but I know when I've been in situations like, when a parent has passed away or is dying, which I've had, and I'm sitting there in the hospital and you're always on hyper alert and you're worried and anxious and upset, I don't eat. I have absolutely no appetite. That's because this system has shifted, and it's telling your body that you don't need to eat right now. You don't need to put all that blood and energy into your digestive system because it's not important. What's important is this. And so it's helping the body to find that balancing point, which I'll go through a whole bunch of tips at the end. So make sure you stay tuned to the very end, and I'll go through some great tips and suggestions on how you can actually fix this chronic fight or flight system so that you can start to heal and rebalance yourself. Now again, there's a time and a place for fear. Absolutely. Just like every emotion has its time and place. But it's when it becomes chronic and it starts to shut our system down and create problems, that's when it needs to be looked at and fixed. So let's look at some of the symptoms that your body might be expressing this chronic stress and anxiety and fear. And if you have some of these particular symptoms, which you might not have ever connected to the fact that it's related truly to a layer of fear and a chronic fear, it's good to be able to really look at them and go, I never really thought of that. So if you have some of these symptoms, probably harboring some chronic old deep fear issues that maybe you need to take some time to look at and check out the exercises at the end. So thinking about, the adrenal system, and your adrenals are your get up and go. Oftentimes people who are struggling with a lot of chronic fear issues feel very dull, very flat, very tired, just have trouble getting up and going. For instance, you ever find that sometimes just even getting off the couch to get up and go or taking those steps upstairs makes you kind of feel over-exhausted and overwhelmed. It's like, that's a lot of work. If you feel that way, then you probably have some severe adrenal stress, which is related to you're carrying some chronic stress, fear, anxiety, worry. The opposite of this, actually, and the polar opposite, is actually feeling super excitable. And so having chronic bouts of feeling anxiety or palpitations or feeling unsettled and anxious and, gotta go, gotta do, why can't I settle down? Not being able to completely relax at any time, even, trying to go to bed at night. And if you can't lay down and get yourself to shut off, you get the monkey brain going, that often is because there's some sort of thing you're fretting and worrying about. And if that's the case, maybe get up and write it down or take some time. We'll go through tips at the end. But again, having the adrenals feel like they need to keep firing, it's their way of trying to find that balance point, trying to find homeostasis, but it can't because you're dealing with some chronic emotional trauma that you just haven't worked through properly, and it's stuck, and your body keeps trying to throw up that, oh my God, we need to fix this. Oh, okay, no, I'm too tired. But we need to fix this. Oh, no, I'm too tired. That's really often how fear plays out in our body. It's the highs and these lows. Another interesting thing about chronic fear is that our senses tend to get oversensitive. So if you ever feel like, that noise is too loud, and the person beside you looks at you like, no, it's not. Or everything seems to bother your eyes, the bright light, or, that kind of thing. Your hearing and even your sense of smell and taste, like, oh God, that's a horrible smell. And yet the people around you are like, I don't smell anything. Having super acute senses and overly acute senses where you're just totally disrupted by everything in life is generally because you're carrying chronic unresolved fear. Also, tending to get overheated easily. Again, we often think of cold fear. That's usually in the early stages. When people get cold, they shut down in that acute phase. But in a chronic phase, often people have trouble with their body heat. And so they often tend to get, again, flushes. If you think of anxiousness and being worried and anxiety, it tends to come with a flush of some sort. If you're having that, maybe fear. Also, the biggest thing I see is being more prone to head trauma. So if you think about it, if you keep bumping your head or you've had multiple injuries or accidents where you've had a slight concussion or whiplash, then that often it triggers an unresolved issue. And that unresolved issue then creates, attempts of your body to try to resolve it again by going back through that experience. I know it's a very bizarre way to think the body, but it keeps throwing out, I have this issue, bump my head again. Geez, what the heck is that? Usually it's because your body's trying to tell you that I need to get this fixed. This is a stuck state that I can't work through. And so, head traumas, concussions, headaches, feeling, as I said earlier, dull and, having trouble focusing, feeling foggy all the time. These kind of issues, even fainting, again, adrenals shutting down. These are all chronic fear issues that, are asking for resolution. And a lot of times with concussions and head injuries is people will start snoring or have narcolepsy. Those kind of issues are also related to fear issues. Having heavy eyes, again, goes along with the just feeling drowsy and tired and, overdone. So heavy eyelids, heavy weighted feeling in the head and the shoulders and the neck. Constipation, as I said, when you're shutting down the whole digestive system, you will get constipation and or diarrhea if it's an excitement phase. So if the body's in this oscillation of trying to fix, you may oscillate between bouts of chronic constipation and then diarrhea, the body trying to purge itself. So if you have these kind of weird oscillations, might be some fear, anxiety, stress, worry that you're not resolving. And then along with the sleep, of course, is have you ever woke up, from a weird dream or just woke in the middle of the night kind of feeling like you were suffocating? Again, part of that narcolepsy feeling, not breathing properly. So people that need to go get CPAPs, maybe you have some unresolved fear, anxiety, stress, and worry that should actually be looked at. If you look at that issue, and weight also can create that problem. So between those two issues, if you fixed both of those, you would probably be able to get rid of your CPAP machine. And then last but not least is just weird tics and tremors. So if you think of the body being in chronic fight or flight, eventually the musculoskeletal system is going to wear down as well. And so people can get often weird cramps and tics and aches like that in your limbs. So of that list, if there's anything you really connect with or resonate with, then, maybe it's time to really look at, okay, is there some unresolved fear, anxiety, stress, or worry that I'm just haven't, been able to stop and look at or reflect on or be aware of? If so, let's go through some tips and suggestions that will help you maybe to move forward and get out of those crazy, weird symptoms. So to start with, take some time over the day to be aware of those times when you feel like I'm getting tense, it's building up, I'm feeling off, or, I'm having some weird digestive issues. Why is that? When is that? What's triggering it? What's happened just before that? And while you're starting to recognize when your body starts to get tense and anxious and worried, what's going on in your head? What thoughts are coming up? What are you thinking about? When you can start to connect the two, the body reaction to your thoughts, then those thoughts can be filtered down into the emotional body. So it's important to maybe, again, next step is to journal. If you have some time when you're recognizing things, even if it's just on your phone, make a quick note on your phone to go, this happened at this time and this is what I was thinking. Just a moment, so then later when you have time to sit down and really journal about it, you can start to really dig deeper and reflect on, what is causing the emotional reaction to come out in my physical body. What fears and what worries do I have? What things am I stressing about? Sometimes we can pinpoint sort of more surface stuff, like, okay, yeah, I'm worrying about my finances, or I'm worrying about what's going to happen next week, or I'm, worrying about my family members, or all these things. So put down everything you can think of that you stress and you worry about. And then from there, start to filter out, okay, next step is it a priority? Is it something you can do something about? If one of those stresses or anxieties or fears or worries is something that you can immediately address, then do so. Make time to actually do something about it. If it's something that you can't do anything about at this time, but you could start to pick at it, then make a note and let yourself know that, okay, I'm going to address this, and maybe set a time aside in a week or in a few days or whenever you feel like you can actually start to maybe address that. And again, just address things. If it's a really massive issue like debt and financial stress, then start implementing little steps to actually rectify it so you can find a level of peace with it and peace in the moment. And then finally, if it's something that no matter what, you can't do anything about, for instance, worrying about your teenage kids that are off on their own, that some harm might become them. Well, yeah, it's a justifiable worry and a fear, but you can't really do anything about that. They are their own responsible adults. They can take care of themselves, and it's their journey. Recognize that, this is their life and their journey, and you really cannot control that, and you have to trust, and you have to allow the universe to take care of them and yourself. So again, if it's something you absolutely have no control over, let it go. Give it over to a higher power. Whatever that higher power is for you, let it go and give it over. And then find the peace within yourself to know that I will do whatever I can when and if I can. And other than that, I'm going to trust. Okay, so hopefully, this has given you some insight into some areas that I might be holding on to some deep unresolved fear coming out as my stress, my anxiety, my worry, and helping you to let go of a lot of this stuff that you really can't change and do anything about so that it can fix those physical symptoms that you've been struggling with. And if you need some extra help, I haven't got necessarily a fear kit in particular, and I've been thinking of making one, and I'm just not really sure what I want to put into it. But please, maybe put some comments below and let me know what sort of things do you feel you have fears around, and how does it come out in your life? That'll give me a better idea of what remedies and combinations to come up with. And maybe we'll come up with a great combination kit that'll work for a lot of people. I'd like to do that. And if not, I have a stress, anxiety, and overwhelm kit, which is a great place to start. I will put that link below. So thank you very much for joining me this week. Again, I hope these tips have helped you. And next week, I'm going to, as I said, get out of this series, and I'm going to start a new series about just, again, the things that I've seen, the struggles that I've been through. And this one in particular is about really the next step from my original series that I did. And this was, feeling like I was stumbling in life. Do you feel like you're kind of bumbling along and not really knowing what I should do or fix next, or where I should go? Or if we're all in this journey of higher consciousness and we're trying to better ourselves on every level, then that's what I'm going to jump into over the next bunch of videos. So next week, I'm going to talk about really getting rid of that feeling like you're stumbling and bumbling along and out of kind of that chaotic place, and how to truly get into that centered, more self-empowered place. And so I'm going to do that next week. So make sure you join me, and thank you for following along. And remember, the only thing you can control is yourself. Be authentic, be empowered, and own it completely. Bye.